Someone kept digging up the dead, and no one could figure out why, until they finally caught the person responsible, and what he told them was far worse than anything they'd imagined. Welcome to 3 AM Horror Audio. This story comes from a guy named Amika. He reached out to us a while back, and honestly, it's one of those accounts that just sat with me. You've heard 2 of his stories on this channel before. This is his third, and it might be the most unsettling yet. The events took place in a small village in Ogun State, Nigeria, specifically in a community just outside the town of Ijebuit. Amika couldn't pin down the exact year, but he's confident it happened sometime between 1980 and 1990. And what went down in that village during those years? Nobody who was there has ever really gotten over it. Now, there were 2 brothers in this community, influential men, wealthy, but genuinely generous, the kind of people who actually put their money back into the place they came from. They funded the local mosque, helped build schools, contributed to the market, supported families who had nothing, real pillars of the community. But because of their business ventures, they spent most of their time abroad, Lagos, London. They were rarely home. At some point, these 2 brothers decided they wanted to do something meaningful for the village. See? The main cemetery, the central burial ground for the whole community, was located pretty far from the residential area. When someone died, especially an elder, or someone who passed suddenly in the night, the journey to bury them was exhausting, physically and emotionally. Long roads, heavy grief. It was a lot. So the brothers came up with a plan. Right next to a mosque they had helped build years earlier, a mosque that sat close to their family compound, there was an unused plot of land. Their land? It was overgrown, dense with shrubs, thick brush, and several large old iroko trees that had been there for decades. Nobody used the space for anything, just wild growth, darkness, and the kind of quiet that makes you feel like something is already living there. The brothers decided to donate that land as a new burial ground, closer to the homes, more accessible. The plan was finalized. Workers were lined up. The community was grateful. But then, the mother of these 2 brothers had a dream. She said someone came to her in the night, a figure, and it told her clearly, firmly, "Don't make a cemetery there. It will not go well." She woke up shaken and immediately told her sons, told the village elders. But the brothers brushed it off. "Dreams are just dreams," they said. "This is a good deed. This is something that will benefit the whole community. There is no reason to stop now." And so the work began. The brush was cleared. Poor families from the village took the bamboo and smaller trees for free, firewood, material for their homes. As for the large iroko trees, those were purchased by a local timber trader. His name was his name was Rotimi Adami, a small-time wood seller. Not much money to his name, trying to scratch out a living. He bought the trees for almost nothing, and to keep his costs down, he decided he'd do most of the cutting himself. Hire as few hands as possible. More work, but more profit. The night before he was supposed to start cutting, Rotimi had a dream. Someone came to him, stood right in front of him, and said, "Don't cut those trees. Leave them. Walk away. Nothing good will come of this." He ignored it. Woke up the next morning and got to work. He cut every single tree down, chopped them into sections himself, loaded them onto a truck, and hauled them off to sell in town. The land was cleared. The cemetery was established, and within just a few days, it received its first burial. A village man named Kalu had passed away. He was laid to rest in the new cemetery, wrapped in white burial cloth, lowered into the ground, and mourned properly. The mosque sat right next to the burial ground. So, after the early morning prayer, the following day, a handful of worshippers lingered, just sitting, talking quietly in the dim light of early morning, the way people do when they're not quite ready to go home. When they finally stepped outside after sunrise, they stopped. There was something by Kalu's grave, something long, something white. They moved closer, and what they found, none of them were prepared for. Kalu's grave had been dug open, and his body had been placed on top of the ground, right next to the grave, laid out carefully, almost gently. The white burial cloth was completely intact, not torn, not disturbed. The body showed no signs of animal interference, no scratches, no marks, nothing missing. If a hyena or wild dog had done this, the scene would have been chaotic. Cloth shredded, body dragged, everything scattered. But this looked like a person had done it, deliberately, carefully, like someone had just moved him. People started throwing out explanations. Maybe grave robbers, but nothing was stolen. Maybe someone with a grudge against the family, but why go through all this and leave everything behind? They reburied Kalu that same morning. The next day, same thing. Grave opened, body on top, same careful placement, same undisturbed burial cloth. They reburied him again, third morning, same exact thing. By now the whole village was gathering, demanding answers. Who is doing this? Why? And it was on that third morning that Rotimi showed up, the timberman who had cut the trees. He'd stayed away for 2 days, but now, here he was. And what he said struck people as strange. Look, he said, something doesn't want this ground to be used for burials. Stop fighting it. Bury Kalu somewhere else. The village wasn't having it. Kalu was already buried here. He stays here. Some troublemaker, human or otherwise, wasn't going to dictate where a man rests. They reburied Kalu a third time. Fourth morning. Nothing happened. Completely quiet. Normal. People exhaled. Figured it was over. A few weeks passed. Then a second man died. A well-known elder, the community called Sabo. His full name was Abd Sumad, but everyone just called him Sabo. He was buried in the same cemetery. Next morning, Sabo's body was on top of the ground. The village erupted. Word was sent to the 2 brothers abroad, and they responded immediately. Postcards. For brave men, around the clock. We'll cover the cost. Find out who is doing this and stop it. So starting the second night after Sabo's burial, 4 men stood guard in that cemetery all night long. Come early morning prayer, the muezzin arrived at the mosque and found all 4 of them collapsed on the ground inside the cemetery, dead asleep. He called out to them, shook them. Nothing. More people arrived. More shouting, more shaking, still nothing. And then someone noticed Sabo's body was outside the grave again. Eventually, with great difficulty, the 4 men were woken up. What happened? You were supposed to be on watch. They all said the same thing, word for word. We were watching. We were fine then. Sometime in the deep of the night, this smell hit us. This strange, beautiful scent, like nothing any of us had ever smelled before. And then we were gone. That's the last thing we remember. The village didn't believe them, for new guards were assigned the next night. Same result. All 4 knocked out cold. Same inexplicable scent as their explanation when they woke. Third morning, Rotimi showed up again, and again he said it. Take Sabo's body, bury him somewhere else. This ground is rejecting the dead. The village snapped back at him, reburied Sabo a third time. Fourth day, nothing. Silence. Normal. Over the next month and a half, no one in the village died. No new burials. People slowly stopped thinking about it. Started to assume the strange chapter was closed. Meanwhile, Rotimi got married. He'd been single when all of this started. Somewhere in those 6 weeks of quiet, he met a woman and they wed. They moved into a small house together, and for a little while, things seemed okay. Then one night, his wife woke up. The kerosene lamp in the corner of their room, the one they kept burning low through the night, just enough to see by. It was still flickering, but Rotimi wasn't in bed. She figured maybe he'd gone to lie on the floor because of the heat. She looked. Nothing. She turned the lamp up higher. The bedroom door was bolted shut from the inside, and Rotimi was not in the room. She threw open the door and stepped onto the porch and found her husband lying there, unconscious, covered in dirt. Red clay earth smeared across his arms, his chest, his face. She screamed his name over and over. Eventually, he stirred. His eyes opened, and the first thing he did was grab her hand and press it over her mouth. Stop. Don't make noise. I'll explain everything. Let me clean up first. He bathed, came back inside. She sat across from him and waited. He started rubbing palm oil into his back, and she noticed it. 3 thick marks across his shoulder blades. 2 of them looked old, already healed into raised scars. The third was fresh, raw, like someone had pressed a burning iron rod against his skin and dragged it. Where did those come from? She asked. He didn't know. He genuinely didn't know the scars were there. She pressed harder. The door was bolted from the inside. How did you get out? What happened to your back? Talk to me. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, You know Kalu and Sabo. You know how their bodies kept ending up outside their graves. She said yes. You know how their bodies kept ending up outside their graves. She said yes. That was me. She stared at him. Not on purpose. I don't choose to do it. In the deep of the night, I smell it. That same scent everyone talks about. Beautiful. Overwhelming. And then a voice. Right next to my ear. It says, Rotimi, time to work. Come. And after that, I don't control my body anymore. I walk. I don't know I'm walking. It's like being half asleep and half awake at the same time. I go to the cemetery. The voice tells me to dig. I dig. Then it tells me to lift the body and lay it outside. I do it, and then nothing. I black out. I wake up on the floor of our house, or the porch, or by the water pump, every single time. His wife sat there in silence. Tonight, he continued, a woman from the village was buried after the night prayer, and I went there, and I moved her body too. The next morning, sure enough, the woman's grave was open. Her body was outside. The village had no idea who was responsible. Rotimi's wife knew they couldn't tell anyone. If the village found out it was him, they would kill him. Simple as that. So she took him to her mother. Her mother knew a man, a deeply respected Islamic scholar and spiritual healer in the area. They went to him in secret. They told him everything. The scholar listened. Then he nodded slowly. The Iroko trees, he said. A powerful family of spirits had lived in those trees for generations. They warned Rotimi in his dream. He ignored them. When he cut those trees down, when he split them apart, section by section, and scattered the wood. He shattered their home, their family, and they decided, the way you tore apart what was ours, we will tear apart your life, piece by piece. That is why they use him. It's punishment, and it's a message to the village. This ground is not for burials. It never was. The scholar performed a spiritual cleansing, prayers, blessed oil, and then he tied a protective amulet around Rotimi's wrist. As long as this stays on, he said, they cannot reach him, but guard it. If it ever falls off, they will come back. And for a while, it worked. Over the next year or so, several more people were buried in that cemetery. Not one incident, not one body disturbed. The village forgot the guards, forgot the sleepless nights, forgot the smell that knocked 4 men unconscious. Life went back to normal. Then one evening, word came that the head teacher of the local Islamic school had passed away. A deeply revered man, everyone called him Malam Salisu, Hafiz scholar, beloved by the whole community. His funeral drew an enormous crowd. Rotimi attended, paid his respects, and helped with the burial. That night, Rotimi and his wife ate dinner together and went to bed. Sometime before dawn, they both smelled it at the same time. That scent, beautiful, suffocating, impossible to describe. Rotimi sat up in bed and said, almost calmly, almost like he'd been waiting for it, it's back, I have to go. There's nothing that can stop it. His wife grabbed his wrist. The amulet was gone. Somewhere during the day, the funeral, the digging, the carrying, it had slipped off, and neither of them had noticed. She tried to hold him back, but as she reached for him, she felt it too, that same dreamy heaviness pressing down on her. Her limbs went slow, her thoughts blurred. She could see him stand up. She could see him walk toward the door. She tried to call out, but couldn't quite form the words. And then she was gone, half conscious, watching through a fog as her husband disappeared into the darkness outside. Rotimi walked to the cemetery. The voice led him to Malam Salisu's fresh grave. It told him to dig. He dug. Then it told him to lift the body. He reached down, and the body grabbed him. One hand, cold, rigid, shot out and clamped around Rotimi's wrist with a force that felt like it would turn his bones to powder. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think, and then everything went black. The next morning, after the early prayer, the worshippers walked out of the mosque toward the cemetery. They saw a grave that had been partially dug up, and sticking out of the earth a head, 2 arms spread wide to either side. A man, half buried, unconscious, slumped against the wall of the grave like he'd been pushed down into it. Malam Salisu's body, meanwhile, was exactly where it had been placed the night before. Undisturbed, peaceful. They pulled Rotimi out, brought him back. When he came to, the village was furious. Absolutely furious. You've been doing this the whole time. You violated these graves? And Rotimi, exhausted, marked, broken, said yes. He admitted it. All of it. The accusations flew. People said he'd been paid by black market traders, that he'd been stealing burial cloth, selling bodies to medical students in the city. Some grabbed sticks. This was going to turn very bad, very fast. But then his wife arrived. She pushed through the crowd and laid out the entire story. The dreams, the amulet, the scholar, the scent, all of it. She gave them the scholar's name. People went and contacted him directly. He confirmed everything. The crowd went quiet. The 2 brothers were contacted abroad. There were long conversations, and eventually, the decision was made. Unanimous. No more burials in this cemetery. Malam Salisu would be the last, and that's exactly what happened. The cemetery was closed. The mosque is still standing. The land is still there, overgrown again now, creeping back to what it was. But no one is buried there anymore. Not since Malam Salisu. Not one grave since that morning they pulled Rotimi out of the earth. The two brothers honored their original promise in a different way. They purchased additional land next to the main village cemetery and expanded it. That expansion exists to this day. Rotimi passed away about a year ago. His wife is still alive. The mother of the two brothers. The woman who had the very first dream. The warning that no one listened to. She is also still alive. As for the brothers themselves, one has passed. The other is still overseas. For obvious reasons, their names remain private. But if you ever find yourself in Ogun State, in the community just outside Ijibuigbo, ask about the abandoned cemetery by the old mosque. Anyone who's been there long enough will know exactly what you're talking about, and they will point you right to it. That's where we leave it tonight. Some warnings come in dreams. Some come carved into the skin of a man who had no idea what was happening to him, and some come in the form of a beautiful scent drifting through the dark, right before everything goes wrong. Stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the ground itself is telling you something. The question is whether you're willing to listen. This has been 3 AM Horror Audio. If this story got under your skin, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. We drop new stories every week, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. And if something has happened to you, something you can't quite explain, something that still keeps you up at night, send it to us. We read every submission. Your story could be next. Until then, try to get some sleep. 3 AM Horror Audio. 3 AM Horror Audio. 3 a.m. horror audio. 3 a.m. horror audio.